So I'm going to talk a little bit about what open education means in general, give you a little bit of a background on open education, and then talk about open assessment or badging, both to your personal career development and also some examples of how you can use either badging or open assessment as sort of an ultimate goal for your classroom, even if you don't have a well-defined badge system. So first, open isn't that different from what we've been doing for a million years. You can think of it as a teacher going down the hall and sharing a lesson plan with another teacher. There are plenty of websites like Curricula that are doing that right now, and they're considered an open resource. So none of these ideas are particularly new. It's just sort of the way we're approaching them and how it interacts with 21st century technology and the digital environment. So open education is really based on accessibility, that everyone has access to these courses or course materials, open textbooks, open videos, so great examples of Khan Academy or YouTube. There are plenty of open textbook sites too. If you're familiar with iTunes, they just created iTunes U, which has everything from videos to podcasts and PDFs and books. It's also super student-centered. So instead of dictating what curriculum is to a student, they can take different modules and remix them to really fit their own life. And again, you can transfer this into your classroom right now. So I'm sure some of you are probably thinking about independent projects, not having everyone necessarily choose the same options, but a variety of different project outcomes. And that's an example of student-centered learning. It's just being expanded on in the digital world. It's also community-based. So instead of that top-down, the teacher lectures directly to the student, a lot of it is peer-to-peer. So another student teaching another student about programming JavaScript or creating an app, or teaching another student about the basics of biology. So a lot of it is peer-to-peer based as opposed to this top-down modality that we're all very, very used to. And of course, there's been a lot of research in education that involving peers really does help. It makes for more authentic learning. So open education, again, is taking things we've tried to do in our classrooms for years and just moving it into the digital environment a little more. So three of the key principles in open education, what defines something as open as opposed to closed, are these concepts of being revisable, remixable, and redistributable. And I don't know if any of you have heard of Creative Commons licensing. If anyone wants to give me a little shout out if you've heard of it in the chat. It's an Australian-based company that is trying to get rid of sort of the normal way we do copyright. There's tons of materials right now that are being published online, and the traditional copyright doesn't really apply anymore. People are taking other people's ideas and changing them or quoting them, and it's hard to do in an online environment now. So we're having these Creative Commons licensing where you still give credit to the author, as we've always done, but you're able to change it to suit your own needs. So if you find a great lesson plan online, or a Science Jeopardy PowerPoint that you want to use, you can still use it, make it fit your class, what you're doing in class, and give credit without infringing on anyone's copyrights. So you can revise things, you can post them back online, you can remix them so they really specifically work for your class. Yes, she does. She does tons of open educational resources. And you can redistribute them. So you know, you can say, well, this is my work, I've built on this previous work, and make it more collaborative, as opposed to all these little pockets working on their own materials. You all have a Google Docs together where you can work collaboratively. And that's a huge part of open. And again, you do this in your classrooms all the time with fellow teachers. I used to, quote, steal lesson plans from the internet all the time and remix them and modify them for my class. There are tons of materials out there already that are freely available that you can use for your classroom. So don't forget that there's lots of collaboration that you can do. In your first years of teaching, you'll be quite overwhelmed. So it's always good when you can, you can survive by using some other people's resources, giving them credit, but also using them. And a couple keys on open philosophy, it's really adaptive. So there might be new ideas here that never ever result in anything solid. You try them out for a couple of years, you take what works and you keep doing it, and you take what doesn't and you learn and grow from that. And so this really is sort of a trial and error atmosphere. No judgment, everyone's working together. It's also innovative. So we're really looking towards the future, trying to go outside the box a little, and again, collaborate. Open education is very much focused on peer-to-peer resources, everyone working together to achieve the same goals as opposed to siloing. And so if you have this wonderful open textbook that you've created and you've shared like Eileen has done, how do you measure these things? How do you show that you've really edited something well? How do you take this open course that you've created and have students take and give students credit for these things? And so we need a way of open assessment. And badging is a way of doing that. And it's an emerging way. Badging, yes. There we go. To recognize skills, experience, and knowledge you wouldn't normally be able to. So if a student in your class, for example, does a bunch of summer activities that are suggested but not necessarily required for your course, you're not going to grade them, but you say, well, during the summer, why don't you try growing your own ecosystem and see what happens in your garden, and then come back and talk about it to the class. Again, you can't necessarily grade that, it's not required, but you do want to recognize going above and beyond. So you need some way to assess that, and badging really helps. In terms of your own professional development, say you go online, take an open course, look at Eileen's materials, and learn how to build in Second Life. How do you get credit for that? Besides going to a course like a traditional Empire State Second Life course, which we don't offer, you might get a badge for that. And they're for informal or formal learning. So again, that course model where you take a course on Second Life, or you can use open educational materials. Like open textbooks, YouTube videos to learn how to build your own Second Life classroom. They're for any level, from basic to mastery. So if a student in your class has very basic PowerPoint skills that they come in, you can give them a badge for that, because you probably won't be teaching a lot of PowerPoint skills. And then by the end of the course, it's not, again, something you're grading, but you do want to give recognition for their ability to use a smartboard by the end of class. Or really detailed PowerPoint slides. You can give them a more mastery level badge.